Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Policy Driven, a podcast on global transport policy and mobility policy. My name is Thomas Jérémy Henlefebvre, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mark Watts.
Hello, Tom. Hello there, Alessia and Antoine.
Well, it's been a while since our last regular policy-driven episode. Of course, we had a special episode on the IMO, and I think we owe the listeners a bit of an explanation. Really simply, it's been very busy, if not arguably hectic, few months on transport and energy policy. And personally, I can't believe how time has just flown by. Wouldn't you agree, Mark?
Totally. It's been a very busy period, I think, for everyone. Everyone says it's going to quiet down next quarter, but it seems to get busier and busier, particularly in the field of transport and energy and climate. I think we've never been busy, but it's also getting quite exciting. We're coming up, for example, people forget Fit for 55 is all about 2030, 55% reduction by 2030. It's not long now, so maybe that's why everyone's getting a little bit more busy to try and meet important deadlines.
Absolutely. And speaking of time just flying by, today we are joined by two guests who are at the forefront of electric aviation. We have Alessia Affinito, I hope I pronounced that correctly, EU Public Affairs Manager at VÆRIDION, and Antoine Toulemont, a European and International Affairs Advisor at AERO. Welcome both.
Thank you so much, Thomas, Mark, and Antoine. Thank you for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you. Very looking forward for the discussion.
Alessia, let's start with you. You studied political science at Sciences Po Bordeaux. I did a little bit of Sciences Po Paris, which is not the same, I hear, and quickly started working in the aviation sector. Have you always been fascinated with things that fly?
So I would have to say yes, because both my parents are from Naples, but my dad was offered a job in Toulouse before I was born, so we moved there, and he was offered a job in aviation. And growing up in Toulouse, you're surrounded by people working in aviation. So very quickly, I started being interested in Airbus and then in the Beluga flying over Toulouse. So I was very interested in aviation soon. And I studied public affairs at Sciences Po Bordeaux. And I wanted to lobby for something that mattered to me. And very quickly, it became connectivity because so my parents are in Toulouse. The rest of my family is in Naples. And without being able to fly, we wouldn't have been able to see each other. So yeah, that's how I got my interest in that. And after Sciences Po Bordeaux, I found an internship at the European Region Airline Association, where I also met Antoine there. And after a few years at AERO, I started working for one of their members, VÆRIDION, which is a German startup that is working on delivering a fully electric aircraft for 9 passengers and batteries in the wings.
I have to say, I actually share that aspect of connectivity. As some of you may know, I grew up in sub-Saharan Africa. My parents were diplomats, and the connection between Quebec and Africa had to be done by plane. And that's where my personal fascination for connectivity and transport and aviation in particular came from. Antoine, how about yourself? Have you always been interested in things that fly?
Yeah, same. Actually, with my parents, we always lived close to an airport. My father used to live for the French National Weather Forecast organization, I should say. So I started to live next to Paris-Orly, so seeing the planes flying over our house, then living next to Nantes Atlantic, a regional airport, where I enjoyed even before 2001 the fact that being young, sitting on the grass and watching just the plane to taxi and take off, which it's quite dreamy when you think about it now. So that led me to start my flying lessons when I was 15. So this is when I started to fly in the Alps, basically next to Grenoble. I started my first solo flights, etc., and leading to an aviation engineering school, of course, just after my initial studies, but learning a bit more about the technical aspect of aviation, let us say. But very soon I was really attracted and motivated by international European affairs, which are so sometimes can be technical, which led me to the French National Aviation Administration in Paris, working mainly on aviation safety. Then I went to EASA, so this European Aviation Safety Agency based in Cologne as well, where I really had a crush, a very big attraction on EU policies and EU affairs, where I really felt like the future of aviation, it's being decided at the European level. This is where we define what aviation will be in the future. And naturally, I had this opportunity to join the European Commission for 4 years as a French civil servant, as part of a partnership, let us say. And since 3 years, I'm working, so I've switched now to the private side. I'm actually learning tons, a lot, and now I'm working for this company, AERO. It's a company that has been founded in 2018. We are now close to 300, so it's quite a big company now. It has a factory in the making, 50,000 square meters, and we have 3 aircraft programs: a 2-seater, which is already certified, available commercially, which includes an electric version. We have a 19-seater, a regional aircraft, hybrid electric. And we have now a defense project, which is basically a drone, a big one, a medium altitude, long endurance drone in the 2 tons category, which we just launched last year. So quite a busy agenda here in Brussels, but fascinating to shape a future industrial actor in the making, and with a European perspective, of course.
It sounds it. Well, Mark, you're surrounded by 3 francophones who live near airports. Did you also have your eye in the sky, or?
I can't beat that. Yeah, I'm struggling. I think as probably viewers have been bored hearing this story before. I've always been fascinated by flying. I don't know why. Even though I wasn't born near an airport or didn't have family in civil aviation or indeed military aviation, I've always been drawn to aviation. And I think I particularly take the point I think a number of you made about connectivity. For all the challenges of aviation, and we'll come on to that, particularly the climate impact, we don't want to deprive people of that absolute necessity of connectivity, be it for business, pleasure, or for family and friends. And I think that's an often understated and undervalued right, almost, I think we have in our modern society, that we all want to jump on a plane, go on holiday, or see friends and family, and that's a right that we want to protect. And I think if we take that away, it will, the world will be a lot poorer for it. So I think connectivity, I've always been into connectivity, and aviation is a key part of that, Tom.
Antoine and Alessia, connectivity is part of, I guess, arguably the European freedoms, right? It's a basis of the European Union. We note that aviation today is a fossil-based business. How is electric aviation perceived and being approached at the European Union level, especially provided the broader pressures to decarbonize the industry? Just give us the broad strokes.
Alessia, you can start if you want.
Thank you. I would say that for now it's quite niche, but I also see a focus from the past mandate where the focus was way more on sustainable aviation fuels. Now I think policymakers see more and more how in Europe, we have a broad ecosystem that is innovating and really working on it, and they see how fast it's also going. And I think there is more and more interest from the European Union on these new solutions.
Indeed, I think we switched in the last past years from it may come one day, but it's still like science fiction, to okay, it's happening now, and it has an industrial application. The reason also is like, as Brussels also is quite heated also on the debate on automotive, it has shed a light also on aviation. So yeah, but what about aviation? I mean, is aviation in the same category as automotive? Can we protect it? Will it happen as well? So indirectly, what happened on automotive shed a light of what was possible or not in the electric aviation. And I think everybody realized that now we are in a situation where, yes, we can industrialize batteries, heavy power, heavy duty batteries, as well as engine. And so that defines a new approach. And I think the Commission, not only speaking words with the policy, but also investing, is now completely convinced that it's a pan of the decarbonization of aviation sector to support.
Can I just follow up, if I may? I think we all recognise the key role this plays in terms of sustainability, but I wonder, going on to industrial policy, we've seen recently some of the big headlines was the Sustainable Transport Investment Plan and the Industry Accelerator Act. I wonder whether this very important sector is being acknowledged in those documents, because I know there are many who feel they've been left out of those documents. A lot of focus, as you mentioned, on automobile. So are important niche sectors though they may be, but nonetheless in the future strategic, are they getting the attention they deserve in Europe's emerging industrial policies?
Maybe if I may start on this one, is just I would say we don't have yet so many aspects to fix compared to automotive or compared to other sectors of aviation. Like STIP really was much focused on sustainable aviation fuels because it's a sector that does not really take off at the moment. It's not a sector that is growing as fast as we would like to. And if I would have a little bit of critical view, STIP did not bring some fresh things. It's basically wrapped up money packages that were already existing and made it as an announcement, but it did not bring something new. So to be a part of it or not, bon, it did not change so much. The Industrial Accelerator Act is a bit different, but it's, I mean, again, there it's to fix a competition disadvantage between Europe and external actors, which again, on our side, we do not really suffer from at the moment. We are still ahead in terms of aviation progress, in terms of technical progresses, in terms of technical know-how, in terms of access to the technology. So I wouldn't, I mean, for us, it's not like really a fix that we need at the moment. What we need is private capital, growth, access to prototype, and then just selling the aircraft and build, of course, the supply chain. So yes, we need an industrial policy strategy to accelerate, but not to protect from external threat at the moment.
Alessia, anything to add?
Yeah, if I can complement Antoine's response, I think indeed that our sector is not acknowledged enough. I think it's still underestimated how this kind of innovation can help EU leadership in industry, in innovation, and also in their decarbonization to achieve these goals. And also from a geopolitical perspective, because this is something that has been brought up quite often with the crisis in Iran, I think it's still underestimated how we can decrease our dependency on other world regions for jet fuel and also relieve the market of SAF that is not taking off. Because if we manage to decarbonize shorter flights with green electric aircraft or hybrid aircraft, then the SAF market can be only dedicated to longer flights.
Mm-hmm. I want to focus in on something which you mentioned, Antoine, which is that Europe is a leader in aviation. Now, if I were playing the devil's advocate, I would say Europe was the leader in the automotive sector and was a leader in the train sector, which is now being surpassed by China in many regards. Do you think there's a risk in saying that Europe is a leader, that we become complacent? And more importantly, if there is that risk, not wanting to go into full-on protectionism, but is there a need to ensure that some of the key components and the key knowledge remains European rather than imported from third countries, particularly, I guess, countries that are not necessarily aligned with the EU and its values?
I think I sense in Brussels, in many policymaker mind, the great feeling of not repeating the mistakes of the past. Also, I sense it at national level. There is a lot in every country. Basically, it's a political objective to reindustrialize the country. People have really realized that not only we have lost our industries, but we have lost as well the supremacy on services. If you go back in time, in the 2000s and shortly after, there was this trend about the industry without factories. Then no worries, we will host all kind of services, and it will bring higher salaries, less tiring jobs, but more advantage. But we completely lost out because we were trying to catch up on an industry that was already far advanced on the other side of the Atlantic, for instance. So here, I think everybody realized that we got some of the terms wrong in the past, and that we should have stick with our industry. And I think one of the biggest marker for that was the COVID. During COVID times, everybody realized that we don't manufacture anything. We are so much dependent. And when the world was absolutely closed, that there was no connectivity at all, a lot of, I think, policymakers realized that we were not making anything. So if that situation would last for longer than that, we would be in a very big trouble. So I think that for aviation, now I see more and more in the policymakers' view that we really have not only to say that we want to support the industry, but actually do it, invest in it. I see that for electric aviation, indeed, it's growing. I think the interest is growing, but not only the interest, but the acts. So investment, in terms of public money spent at EU level, we are on par with sustainable aviation fuels at the moment. When you see the overall investment into, for instance, in the innovation fund, which is the biggest industrial fund at EU level, we are on par with sustainable aviation fuels. So far, I would say we've taken the turn. I see a lot of stress from the policymakers to support EU tech champions and to make sure that they can stay, thrive, and survive in the EU. So far, so good, I would say.
And there's something that I wanted to say is that also we see more and more in discussion, especially with the Commission, that they ask us, but what kind of supply chain is missing in Europe for your product? What kind of technologies are we missing? How can we support that? And I think the fact that they acknowledge that we're not champion in all kind of supply products, and the fact that they want to help us to then deliver a final product, it's a very good start also.
Mark, any thoughts on that? I recognize that you were an MEP during those 2000s that Antoine mentioned. Was the mood not on industrialization at the time? Was it really focused on services?
Well, I think we're going through a real almost trauma now, aren't we? As Antoine mentioned, maybe starting with COVID, and it's forced us to reflect on the geopolitics of it all, and the benefits and the costs maybe of globalization, which I think has brought us huge benefits, but it's now clearly coming under threat. So we're seeing, this sort of mantra: we don't want to decarbonize if it means we're going to deindustrialize. I think that's what Ursula von der Leyen said. We need to decarbonize and reindustrialize. My only concern, and maybe I'm going back to a different era, is that we still have to maintain competitiveness. And I think this is what America's seeing with their tariffs, that made in Europe and things that are now very fashionable still have to be viable. And Europe hasn't got a lot of money to subsidize its industries, for example, on the scale that maybe we would like to. So I think this is why sectors like electric aviation are so interesting, because if they can be competitive and they can get support of the EU that don't require massive subsidies and can create not just a niche but an industrial leader in Europe, then that's where Europe should be, in my view. It's not necessarily subsidizing the old industries. We've got to be supporting the new ones. So I hope that makes sense, Thomas, in terms of transitioning from maybe what we learned in the early 2000s to the post-COVID world, where Europe just can't turn the clock back. We can't reindustrialize and bring back coal and steel, for example. That's not going to happen. But we should be supporting modern industries. And I think this, from what we're hearing, this is one that requires support. But it's intelligent support, not the old-fashioned subsidies. It's getting the regulatory regime right. And I'd love to hear more from Antoine and Alessia on what regulations are required to be changed or put in place or removed to maybe create a better level playing field in the industry. Because that's what I think often is holding up industrial innovation scale up, is Europe's regulatory framework is no longer fit for, say, the late 2020s, 2030s. So Antoine, Alessia, it'd be good to hear your thoughts on the regulatory framework where Europe could provide more support for sectors like yours.
Yeah, you mentioned a very important point. I think in the mind of the people also, many have forgotten what we said just after COVID. Also, it was build back better, and few of the people have also looked at what does it mean actually build back better, and that's precisely what you said, is to bet on actors which will be like the term that I like, the best athletes, so the best runners in today's competition. So not just trying to finance or support a world that did exist in the past and for the sake of competitivity, but to support actors that will be athletes in the current world and that will be competitive. And I think that's the different shift. In terms of policy, I think what we need now for electric aviation, because there is a path. I mean, we haven't really spoken about it, but the fact is, electric aviation is here to scale. I think this is also in the mind of policymakers. What they have understood is like what we can do before 2030 are very small planes, 19 seats for us, and it's hybrid, 9 seats for VÆRIDION. That's the most we can do before 2030, and it's not a regulatory barrier; it's a physical and industrial one. But after 2030, we can do much more. We can, especially with hybrid electric technologies, we can target the 70, 100 seats and probably more after, but leads to more electric planes. It means what? It means that in terms of infrastructure, there is a big change coming. Some airports have already embraced it with ground handling vehicles, so you already have a lot of electricity. But I would say two main priorities for Europe to welcome that big electrification in aviation. It's a grid connectivity and infrastructure funding and deployment. That's the two main objectives. I mean, that's not a lot in the end. Of course, you go also to what you need to change as well on innovation funding. I mean, reforming the programs like Clean Aviation. But that's a bit outside of policy. But in terms of policy, it's basically to deploy the infrastructure and give the visibility for airlines to be able to recharge their planes wherever and whenever they want to.
Yes, indeed. I think sometimes when we talk about innovative aircraft, we forget that it's a final product that has a business case. And to be operated, we need three main things, which is certification, infrastructure deployment, and then incentives for the market, because our kind of planes, because they are for now small, for the first one that will enter the market will be 9 to 20 passengers. They can only be operated by regional airlines that live on thin margins. And if they don't have the right incentives and the right push to buy and have this fleet renewal, then there is going to be a problem, something that will block our growth.
And in your minds, does that necessarily mean subsidy? Does that necessarily mean tax incentives? Or are there other more intelligent, effective means of supporting operators in their purchase of electric aviation?
I wouldn't say that there should be subsidies, but more incentives. For example, now that there are going to be quite some revision in this mandate, I think it's the opportunity to have, for example, modular airport charges that depends on the CO2 emission of the aircraft. So, for example, if this airline is operating an aircraft that emits less CO2 because it's hybrid or fully electric, then they can also pay less airport charges. And then the airlines will be pushed to buy this new aircraft. Same thing with the CO2 tickets within EU ETS. If there are reduced overall tickets for airlines that are operating with hybrid or electric aircraft, the same way that there are reduction of CO2 tickets for airlines operating with SAF, then their airline will see also a real short-term opportunity to buy this kind of aircraft.
Probably what you need also to understand. I mean, we are also shifting with new aircraft technologies, and especially electric aviation. We are shifting from the current logic. Today, it's not really expensive to buy a classical turboprop aircraft, but it's expensive to run it, to operate it, because of the fuel, because of the maintenance, etc. With electric planes, this is the other way around. It's expensive to buy, but it's very cheap to operate. So that's why we have to change a bit the focus of the help, which indeed, if we can get it on the operational way, it's very, very important, because then the airline will reimburse its acquisition way faster. But if we have also to work on acquisition costs, that's also something where we can explore some ideas. I think that we can foster much more the reuse of CO2 revenues. And it's also a hot topic in Brussels. Many big businesses are questioning the sense of EU ETS. Do we need a CO2 markets? And I think people have a bit lost their the views of how smart we can reuse that type of money. I mean, it's a 40 billion market per year. 6 to 7 billion is going to the innovation fund each and every year, and we can have much smarter way to use that money today by financing directly fleets, operators, operational model, for instance. But with that thinking that we need to reduce the acquisition cost and we need to support new business model and reuse much more the CO2 revenues, or having also some notions like public money per CO2 as well, on public service obligation. We should be driven as well by public money per ton of CO2 emitted as well, to make it also more, more flowing and supporting actors who wants to be the early movers for electric aviation. But that's the type of thinking we need to have.
Can I just follow on, if I may, with that logic of the argument? And I think Alessia put it very well. You need the right certification infrastructure and incentives, but also Antoine giving that granularity on the carbon market. I mean, what you're saying seems to make eminent sense to me. Are you receiving a positive response in Brussels from the policymakers, the legislators? Are they as enthusiastic about your industry as I believe they should be? Or are you still in the education mode where people are still a bit skeptical about the scale-up opportunities? How are you finding it in terms of convincing them that this is a future credible European industry as well as a decarbonization initiative?
You can go, Alessia.
Who wants to take that first?
I would say that when I started VÆRIDION, I was positively surprised how policymakers are interested into the project, and I think they believe in it, and they are very happy to support it in every way they can. Then, of course, we want always more, and they have their ends tied with other sectors. But no, I think it's very well welcome. Maybe where we lack of education is more on the general public. They still, when I say to a friend or someone I just met that I work for electric aviation, the first reaction is always, oh, but does it exist for real? So I think it's getting there at the policy level. It still needs to get there on the general knowledge.
No, but I share everything. Well, the fact is also with Alessia, we do a lot of lobbying together. So very often we face the same policymakers together. And well, I should say, Alessia, perhaps we were pleasantly surprised this year because we've got, for instance, we got also solicited by, for instance, Philippe Cornelis, who is the aviation director of the Commission, who really willingly came to us to say, look, what can we do for you? And how can we support you in going forward, which already speaks a lot. We've been helped a lot also already by other part of the Commission, DG Climat, notably. So this all the units in charge of the Innovation Fund, by the Director General, by the persons in charge of EU ETS as well. They are convinced from day one, and they are really enthusiastic. Any progress, I mean, I've shared any big progresses we've made, so whether it was a big closing round, the first flight, I always got in return very enthusiastic emails, very kind as well, like really into the projects and really getting duly interested, duly happy. And in each and every policymaker, and I've been one of them, you like to be useful. In the end, you like to contribute to something concrete, because, sorry to say, it does not happen so often that you can link your actions to specific projects, to specific steps. So as we can bring that direct link to them, and that they've actually acted to make that happen, that brings a lot of joy, I think.
I mean, that's really, really encouraging. Tom's desperate to come back in, but just a final word to close this round, if I may. I mean, it sounds very positive. Your case is compelling. Your asks seem very proportionate, linked, as you say, Antoine, to the EU agenda. So what are the hurdles then? Because it sounds like you're pushing at open doors. Is there opposition? I mean, Alessia, you talked about maybe education and ignorance, but is there opposition? Are there people that don't want you to succeed?
I think yeah. Well, the opposition, I should say, is exactly the businesses you mentioned before. Is businesses that are looking for legacy support and that are not taking this turn that they should be, meaning, well, to bring new products that are in line with the actual environmental effort that aviation needs to make. I mean, there is kind of a blind side of the amplitude of the effort that aviation needs to make, and every year you're late, every year you don't make that effort, you have to make a even bigger effort after. So there are some, I mean, also the fact is, VÆRIDION and us, we are new actors coming. You have a cake, you know, in process you have a cake, and we come, and basically we are entitled to get a part of the cake. So to who we will steal that part of the cake? I mean, that's the mind of some industry in Brussels. But honestly, it's a few of them, and I think mine are changing. But so far, I would say where the hurdle is at the moment, and it's mostly on the research part. We could go way faster, VÆRIDION and us, if we would be much more supported with a program like Clean Aviation. So far, it's a program that is closed because it's being ruled by the incumbents. So that's also prevent. I mean, that's not as open as it should be at the moment. And this is where we feel that we could go so much faster by delivering prototypes, flight testing, funding technological bricks that could help us to go way faster actually on our industrial timeline. So that's the hurdle I see. Maybe another one, but as we are like now we have gone through, it's the capital. So how can you foster the level of capital you need in the timeline that you need in order to fulfill your industrial ambitions? We've closed up a round of 340 million euros this year with AERO. It's huge, but it took us 2 years to do it. That kind of round in the US or in China, you do it in 6 months. So it's good. We are quite happy, but so far it's still quite slow in Europe to gather the money. Hopefully, it's again on this aspect is also going better. The Commission is bringing up the scale-up fund with ticket size that may help us also to go much faster. So the response is there. But I should say that in Brussels, all of us lobbyists as well, we should be much more mindful and knowledgeable about what do we need to do in order to foster much faster capital investment into EU projects. It's lacking at the moment.
From my side, from VÆRIDION side, I would say that indeed investors are really keen and interested in our project in electric aviation. But for us, it was more challenging as for now to raise public money, and we see some risk-averse behavior from some specific institutions that are supposed to help startups and innovation, which was a bit disappointing for us. So maybe one problem that I would raise at EU level is this risk-averse behavior, which I can also understand because in the end it's public money, but maybe there is the money, but it's not channeled right. Also because in the program like Clean Aviation, rules are made by big players. So, and we're quite new companies. Also, VÆRIDION was founded in 2021. So we arrived when these programs were already established.
I share that sentiment, although on a much smaller scale. When I started the company, the Green Mobility magazine, I looked for public funds, and all of them, you had to be in existence for 3 years and have a turnover of 250,000 euros or 200,000 pounds, because it was based in the UK at the time, which is great. But not if you're a startup. You don't get there immediately. I imagine the scale is significantly higher for yourselves.
But also the energy and the resources that it takes to apply to public funding programs. Just to name one, the Innovation Fund. It takes so much energy, so much resources. I don't think it's really accessible for any kind of startup or SME. So also there I see an issue, because if you want to help small businesses, it should be accessible to small businesses.
One thing that we talked about politicians, we talked about the EU, the regulation. One thing we haven't really talked about is passengers. And I recognize you two are lobbyists, but when electric cars came to the market, there was some early adopters, and there's a lot of people that were quite critical or not sure. Are you confident that passengers will accept to ride an electric airplane, and that we'll eventually see electric aircraft or hybrid electric aircraft in EU airports?
That's a very interesting question. The fact is also the aviation segment in which we are together with VÆRIDION is regional aviation. It's a sector that today has one of the oldest aircraft you can operate in the EU. It has a lot of very old turboprops that are from the 80s or the 90s and still operating today, reaching their end of life very, very soon. And so there are aircraft that are having a very old cabin, that are very noisy, that are not feeling like you are in a modern aircraft at all. Us coming with a new aircraft, we have this opportunity to have a new cabin. And one of the things that I think the passenger will really like is the noise. The noise level you will have in the cabin will be much more reduced, changing the experience. I mean, if you see, you can see it. We've released recently, by the way, our new cabin layout on YouTube. And when you enter into the cabin, so it's a 19-seater, it's a small aircraft, but there are two aspects that will, I think, mark you and that will positively please the passengers. The first one is like you can stand up. It will be in this category of cabin. This is the only cabin where you will be able to actually stand up. And the second thing is like the cabin will not be more different than an A220 or an Embraer. So you will have then the experience of a small plane, but with the standard of one of the modern jet cabin you can have. And that's a very important point, because today the demand on small routes can be low because the passengers are scared about the old cabin, or it's a discomfort, and some people prefer to take the car because the cabin of the plane is so much noisy that it's not a pleasant travel anymore. So I think there it will go positively.
I agree with Antoine, especially for the noise reduction problem. With hybrid and electric aircraft, the noise will be so much lowered. I think it will be welcome, especially for population living nearby airports, since this is a topic that is raising everywhere in Europe. And also for the microliner, we're trying to deliver a nice cabin that can be accommodating. We managed to fit one of the tallest commissioners in our cabin mock-up, Commissioner Oxtra. So I think it can be very pleasant for most of the people. And then I think there is some general education to be done, because of course, when people think of hybrid and electric aircraft, they think of batteries that they can go on fire. But what people don't realize is that we have to go through the same certification through EASA, and we have to be compliant with requirements very specific to avoid this fire, to be able to block them or to have a thermal runaway. And to do emergency landing in case this happens. But it's so specific and regulated that it's not a real issue. But it will be up to us, up to airlines, and up to maybe also institutions to educate the general public.
As someone who's traveled extensively on Q400s, ATRs, and even RJ85s, I can attest to the fact that the existing fleet is very old and not particularly comfortable. So I look forward to seeing these planes come to market. We're very cognizant of time. I think, if we have some MEPs and APAs that listen to the podcast, if you gave them one headline message, one takeaway from this conversation about electric aviation, what would it be? Ladies first, Alessia.
So I think I would have to quote our CEO that always says that the EU has all the cards to play to win, and we should then play to win, and really not hesitate to go for that risk, to invest, to go for it, because we can really be competitive against the US and other regions, and we can make it. If not Europe, why the others?
Yeah, I would say think industrial. I think everywhere you can give us the wing to develop industrially, to attract capital, you have to do it. My dream actually would be that for each and every APA and MEP, they keep in mind, behind their mind, sorry, for each and every text to say, what can I do to help that sector to thrive? Because in the end, and I would say, because I think they will be very proud, and I see a lot of them supporting us. They are also, I mean, when we were talking about decision makers, I also shared a lot of our steps with MEPs. For them, I think it's a big political success whenever they can stood in front of this plane and seeing the very first flight. I mean, in a mandate, that's something very special. And the truth is, it will happen in their mandate. So they will be able to witness the very first flight. So be on board and think industrially everywhere you can.
Mark, any concluding thoughts?
Well, just to thank our guests, because it's very inspiring and very positive and very, very creative. And if anything, it just reinforces my view. We in Europe should be more self-confident and more ambitious. This is not the moment to have self-doubt, essentially. And I think we need to see that reflected in the European institutions and above all our member states as we're approaching the multi-annual financial framework negotiations, as we're approaching the review of ETS. We've got to be ambitious to support important industries like this, which will be our future. I'm very, very encouraged, very, very impressed, very, very inspired.
Well, thank you very much, Alessia and Antoine, for joining us today. I think from all of us at the Green Mobility Magazine, we wish you the best of luck when making the future of aviation electric, and we will look forward to perhaps joining you on one of your first flights. Thank you so much, and we hope to welcome you soon. Bye.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.